Foot patrol hours for the month of May totaled 409.25 hours. Bicycle patrol, we had 4 hours of bicycle patrol during the month of May. And school visits, for the month of May, we had one violent event, school event, and we conducted 39 school visits during the month of May. Driving charges, this will be for April, as we're always behind in collecting the statistics. One distracted driving charge, 174 speeding, 5 seatbelt, 1 impaired driving. For the month of April, driver's license suspensions, we had 3 roadside screenings conducted. We had 6 ADLS suspensions, 2 3-day suspensions. Members conducted 28 rides and 21 seatbelt checks. Focus patrols. Closed is our ATM theft crime focus patrol, which was generated in response to the numerous ATM thefts throughout the region. And we didn't have any attempted theft of ATMs during the focus patrol. However, we dedicated 10 3/4 hours to monitoring businesses with ATMs. Still open is the traffic HSD Big 4 patrol on Highway 3 between Simcoe and Delhi. And to date, as of May 31st, 43 officers have dedicated 404.25 hours to traffic enforcement on this section of Highway 3, which has resulted in 101 charges and 20 warnings being issued. Also open is the Big 4 traffic patrol on Highway 24 between Brant County and Simcoe. And as of May 31st, 39 officers have dedicated 720.5 hours to enforcement on Highway 24. That has resulted in 422 charges being laid and 29 warnings being issued. We currently have the focus patrol ongoing on Port Ryerson Road in response to the speeding complaint, as I reported earlier. We also have a focus patrol being conducted on Colonel Talbot Road in Mabie's Corners, which is ongoing in relation to a speeding complaint that was received there from a constituent. And closed is the speeding focus patrol on Cockshot Road in Renton. And there 16 3/4 hours was dedicated and resulted in a total of 19 charges along with 1 warning. Speed spy studies that we've conducted in May. We did Nelson Street West in Port Dover. No problem was observed there. We did Queen Street in Delhi. No problem was observed there. Port Ryerson Road, there is identified problem. We have a focus patrol. Norfolk County Road 30, Middleton, we did a speed spy. No issue was there. Connaught Ave in Delhi, speed spy was conducted. No issue identified. Colonel Talbot Road at Mabie's Corners. Again, we have a focus patrol there. College Ave in Port Rowan, speed spy conducted. No issue there. And St. George Street in Port Dover, speed spy was conducted. No issue there. The speed watch sign, we have deployed Cockshot Road at Inglewood Drive in Port Dover, as well as we had it out at Colonel Talbot Road in Mabie's Corners, which we had it out for several days and had to take it in for several $100s of a repair due to beer bottle mischief damage. And that would be the report.
Thank you. Questions for the inspector? Charlie?
Chair, just a comment, if I may. We all here increasingly, in my opinion, the so-called lack of police presence on our roads for speeding, for downtown areas, etc. Just, I think most people, including myself, don't realize how thin our police officers are stretched. Just for example, we just heard that 911 calls / hang-ups for emergencies are over 6 per day that have to be followed up on. And I'm sure back when David was a young fellow, there wasn't as many of these things around, so people just didn't accidentally, by hitting their pocket, call 911. He actually had David use the rotary phone to dial 911. So it's just... You had trouble with the rotary when you were driving, okay.
Thought it was the cord.
But, you know, and these are important, but this is the world that we are moving ahead with technology and with more things. The mental health responses, 254 hours for May, divided by 31, I did the math, it's over 8 hours per day. So it's almost like an officer between responding to 911 misdials, and there's the odd one that isn't, but most of them are just mistakes, and the mental health, which seems to be increasing. It's like one of our officers each day is spending that much time. Like, you know, no wonder a lot of they're just, I'm sure some days can't keep up to it. Just cannot respond to every call on the officer's shift. Because I know they do their best, but they can't be everywhere all at once. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Just out of curiosity, what would it take to reduce false 911 calls, and what would it take to reduce a 2-car response to a 1-car response? I mean, it seems to me if 2,000 of them are false, that there'd be reasonable grounds for sending 1 police officer and not 2.
Unfortunately, we don't know that they're actually false until we get there. So standard protocol is we dispatch 2 officers.
And what percentage of the total calls would be to 911 would be false?
I don't have that off the top of my head, but the 911 hang-ups, there's quite a few of them.
Like
But
90%, 95%?
I wouldn't even suggest on a percentage basis, but I guess I would not want to even take the chance of an officer being injured because we went to a 1 response call and they went to 1 call that was believed to be false and it turned out to be a true issue, and whether the victim was victimized because of the 1-person response or the officer was injured because of the 1-person response. We do respond to all calls for service that we receive in a priority basis, and we will continue to do that.
Other questions on 911 calls? Charlie?
I don't know. I don't have any of the solutions, Mr. Chair, but is there any record kept of a situation where the same person is making the mistake or initiating a false 911? In other words, the same number, maybe, let's say that, I won't pick on you, David, Carol now was just this morning accidentally hit her 911 5 times in the last month. Is there any, I mean, I know with house security alarms, there's a certain $50 penalty, but is there any follow-up on that, or I don't know how you stop false emergency calls?
If there is a repeat offender per se, we do deal with that on a case-by-case basis, and there is avenues that we can stop that. I believe, whether it was last year, my predecessor, Inspector Horvat, was sitting in this chair, and it was bantered around a false 911 call, much the same as the alarm, which really can't fly because we have to deal with so many different cell phone carriers. Very hard to track that. It all comes down to, again, public education, same as the lock it and lose it, is just reminding people over and over again to make sure that their phone is locked. It's, if they carry it around in their pocket and it's not locked, then they'll butt dial 911. It's an education piece that we continue with.
Any other questions on 911? Any other questions for the inspector on his report? Any other questions for the inspector on any other subject? Seeing none, if we could have a motion to adopt his report. Moved by Charlie, seconded by Jim. All in favor? Thank you. Other business. Is there anything that the two attendees at the OAPSB convention would like to report to the board, that anything of note that we should know that you learned there that we wouldn't otherwise know?
I was one of the attendees. There's not anything that we don't already know. I think a couple of the highlights were one where we were talking about the Community Safety Plan. It is the Ontario Association for the Police Services Board stand that the Detachment Commander's Local Action Plan and the Community Safety Plan are distinct and ought to be, and it's the responsibility of the county to provide the plan. That was the one thing that I did take away from the conference. And the other was, the other focus was on the cannabis bill, and they're moving forward with that. And that, they're really pulling that together. I think it's difficult for them to pull it together because there's so many different levels of government and legislation that'll have to come together.
Thank you. David?
Just based on what Carol said, and the cannabis thing is the same thing that we're going with the health department. I don't believe they're ready yet, but it's going to be enacted, and I hope they get some work done by the time they get it enacted.
Any other business? Question period. Do you have any questions that you would like to pose to us? Seeing none, if we could have a motion to adjourn. Or everybody wants to stay here forever. Moved by Dave. Okay, it's an uncontested adjournment. We'll go.